All right, here we go. And the first slide is sort of all the notes for this. And the first thing really is to say that it's going to be quite a speedy presentation. So that's why I say you'll all get a copy of the slides afterwards. Nearly all the things that I say are in the notes to the slides. So I think you'll get all the cover. But please do feel free to A, stop me if you have questions on the way, B, to use the chat for asking questions, because that means that they are recorded and I can get answers to you if you run out of time. And finally, I'm very happy to go into live Parish Online towards the end of the Q&A session if people want to sort of show me how, or be shown how to do any specific things. But hopefully we'll cover most of what you're hoping to see this afternoon. So what we are going to talk about this afternoon, first of all, is public rights of way, so that you can see what you might be able to expect from your local county council. And it's going to compare the various levels of detail there, because the really good levels of detail is what we're going to be aspiring to. So I'll show you those. Then we'll actually create our own footpath layer. So you'll be going through the steps necessary to create a layer. Then we'll be adding details to it, actual footpaths. We'll be styling them so that they show up in different colors according to different statuses or conditions. And then we'll be adding in all the extras like stiles, bridges, tunnels, quagmires, whatever it happens to be. And then a quick run through how you can publish the results for the world to see. So public rights of way layers, they get published by your county or unitary council, depending on where you are, or they may not be published at all. If they are published so that Parish Online knows about them, you will see them, and I'll show you where to find them in a second. As I said, I'm going to show you two examples, both from Somerset, quite extraordinary. One is very poor, the other is absolutely brilliant. And it's extraordinary, they both come from the same county council. So it just shows you what's available. So if you do get an export of data from your local county council, it will show up something like this in the collection of layers that you see on the left-hand side of your Parish Online screen. So underneath Somerset County Council collection, the first layer that we see is the public rights of way. And that's how it'll probably appear for you if indeed your council publishes it. And at a county level, it's a mess. So there's a color coding here. Footpaths are in pink and bridle paths are in green. And I just put this here to give you some degree of proportion of what the county council is dealing with in terms of quantity. But obviously this is of no use to anybody at this zoom. So we're going to zoom in and give you a bit more local detail. So I've come into our particular parish at this level, and you can see that we start getting allocated ID numbers. So that's actually very handy if you want to communicate with the council about footpaths. You get the details from it. And just like ordinary Parish Online, which I hope most of you are familiar with, if you click on any path, up will come the detail on the left. And you can see that at this level from the county council, you get almost nothing. You get an ID number, and that's about it. The rest of the stuff is more or less of no interest whatsoever to you, although it's possibly of interest to know that you get the length of the footpath calculated for you. So this is a third-party layer. Most of what's in Parish Online comes from third-party layers, and that one big drawback of those is that you can't adjust them. They belong to somebody else, so you can't make changes, and that's usually the reason why we all want to create our own footpaths layer, because we need to be able to add comments, add photographs, whatever it happens to be. So there's the typical public rights of way output. There are very much more detailed layers, and I'm going to show you the next one from Rome, Somerset. Now, ignore the fact that the title on the slide says Explore Somerset. They're a bit like me at the county council level, they lie. So you'll see that this says Explore Somerset up here at the top, but if you look up at the address for the URL, it's Rome, Somerset. And the county level, again, not much use to us at all. But as we zoom in, look at this, the paths start sprouting data. You can get copies of or rather you get icons for where things are, whether they're signposts or styles or gates. They're all covered. So I'm going to zoom in a bit further. And we're looking at this particular path because we're going to use it as a sample today. And the two things of all, having clicked on the path, it behaves just like Parish Online does. Up comes a data record on the left-hand side. And it tells you about the path, a little bit more information than you had before, not a lot, but do note that there are a pair of tabs of more information here. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you what happens when A, we click on this little style down the bottom, and B, we'll go through what those tabs do. So I'm now clicking on the style, and up pops the data record here showing this particular style. And you see the level of detail you get about your style. And there are 4 tabs here. You can't see the other 2, so I'm going to click on those there. And you see you've got photos and issues if there are any issues. In the old days, I think issues got dealt with quite quickly, but nowadays county councils are all running out of money. They're running out of people. They're not being funded to the same extent by the government. And so you can find quite easily records that show an issue that's years old and doesn't look like it's going to be touched, even though it says urgent on it. So that's public rights of way. So at the more detailed layers. Now, what we'd like to do today is to come up with that same level of detail that you've just seen for our own use. So when we create layers in Parish Online, they go into what's called the Parish Layer Collection. And what you need to do, have an idea in your head what data you want to collect for each feature that you have. So I've just come up for today's exercise that we're going to put in on the footpaths, a path ID, a name, a status, any issues, priorities, and a couple of useful bits of information down the bottom. And I have pointed out here that in Parish Online, you're only allowed to have one sort of geometry per layer. So the geometries available are points, lines, or polygons. Unsurprisingly, for footpaths, they count as lines. So we're going to create a line layer. But then if you want to put stiles, bridges, and gateposts on it, they're all counted as points. So you have to have a second layer that you overlay on top. And you show both layers at the same time, and you get that same effect of having all the data to hand. And actually, it works out to our advantage to have 2 separate layers, but I know there are some people who wish the whole lot was all in one go. It's also, I put a note down the bottom that says that the National Cycle Network is one of the layers that you're given. It's rather cunningly hidden under something called Sustrans. I've never worked out why. Maybe it's sustainable transport. But you do have we all have the National Cycle Network, and you may find that they coincide with or overlay or pass over or do something with your footpaths. So that was the first layer, the footpath layer. The footpath feature layer will have a few more points, but very similar. And this is not a list of points to be written in stone. You can choose whatever you like to store in your own data layer. And I've just chosen these as being generally of interest to everybody, but you may well find there's a lot more that you want to have, particularly if we're talking about inspections and the lengthsman and that sort of thing. You may want to add points to that. So we're going to start off by creating the footpaths layer, and we're going to assume that there isn't any public right-of-way layer for us to take as a starting point. So we're going to do footpath 2120, and I've just taken this as an example so you see what we're going to come up with. The way to get started is to create, click on create and then new layer. There is another way of doing it in Parish Online, but we'll cover that later. But for today's purposes, we can just start up here. So I'm going to go to create new layer, and up pops this starting box, which is just a title. And the only thing I'd say about this title is what appears here in your left-hand side. So it needs to be short enough to fit into this column, but it doesn't want to be so short that you've got no idea what you're talking about when you come back to it later. So I'm going to type in here any old title, and I've chosen actual Footpaths 101, and we're then going to go to the next button, and it comes up with what sort of layer are you looking for. So we mentioned earlier the geometry type. You get 3 choices, and we'll show that in the next slide. But here in the description, this is a really useful place to put enough information to remind you when you come back to this in a year's time, or somebody else takes over because you passed on the baton. It gives you a much better idea of what you meant by that weird code you put in the title. So we're going to type in a description in here, and then we'll click on the geometry type. So here we go. I've put in the description for you, and we're going to select the type line because that's what footpaths are. And we'll go on to next. So it then comes up with a screen that says create the new layer, add columns. Now, a column is a field of data. I think columns comes from Excel spreadsheets. And that's what was in the mind of the programmer when he wrote this. But a lot of you may know, if you do anything to do with data, these are also what people call fields. So we want to have several columns of data, which we outlined at the beginning. And to get each one, you click on the plus sign up here. And it pops up and says, we're going to call this column name. That's the default that the system gives you. And it tells you what type of field you want. It defaults to text. We'll get into allowed values in a minute. And you can't have more than one column called name. So you can just change it by clicking on it and typing in whatever you want. We're going to change this one to path ID. And then we'll click on plus again to start the second one. So I click here to change it. And I've done a couple for you so you can see too. And then we've clicked on the third time and got status. And we're pausing here because status is going to be a bit different. It's going to have allowed values. And the point of this is in order to try and get some sort of data validation, that rather than let people make up their own minds what the status of the path is, you give them fixed choices so that at least you've got a standardization of data in your database. So I'm going to click on add plus here, and it comes up with yet another pop-up, and you can put in whatever you like. We're going to start off with good. So I type in good, and that's just the first value. Need to add 2 more. So I add on again, put in bad, and then do it again, put in dangerous, and then we're happy. Those are the 3 I want. So I'll click on confirm. So now it tells us you've got the first 3 columns. We need about 5 more. So in each case, we click on plus, and away we go. And just to save you time, I've put them all in. But I've paused on issue priority here because we want that to have 5 values, 1 to 5. So we're going to add those. And you can see I've done this for you. Just put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and confirm. Then it's a bit confusing because people don't know whether a 1 is the higher priority than 5 or the other way around. So I'm just going to show you that we're going to change this title here. And I'm doing this to show you that it's a piece of cake to make changes in Parish Online. So there's absolutely no problem if you get things wrong the first time round. If you leave out a field that you should have put in, or you put in more than you meant to, it doesn't matter in the slightest. Don't worry about it. So we're just going to change, change this one to read low 1 to 5, which I've done for you here. We're also going to decide that date reported is a date. So let's change this field here. I'm going to click on text, and we can select number or date, and we select date. So now we've got everything the way we want it. If you decide that you don't like the order in which you've done these, you can move them around, all right? Just click on the one you want to change and then adjust it with the arrows here, up or down, or all the way to the bottom, or all the way to the top. And then once you're happy with everything in the order that they come, and this is the order that they'll pop up with when you see a data record up here. So it is something that people may want to do. When you're ready, click finish. Now, the system has saved your new layer up in the cloud, and you'll get a box that tells you it's saved correctly. Very occasionally, you'll get a box in red that says there was an error. And this usually means that you've had a connectivity glitch whilst you were saving. So just click on finish again and it saves it. We've come back to the parish layers just so you can see what happened. Because there's no obvious evidence here that you've created a new layer, but all the new layers go into your parish layer. So click on parish layers and you'll find that it's not immediately obvious because new layers are always added to the bottom. So if you happen to have a whole bunch of layers that you've created previously, you may have to scroll down quite a long way before you find your new one. And that can be an issue, so we're going to deal with that as well. So just to make sure we're okay with where we've got to, we've created a new line layer. It's got 8 columns of data. 2 of those have got allowed values to restrict the number of choices that people have to write in. 7 of them are text, 1 is in date. And we're now going to make one of those a required column. Now, the purpose of this is that when you're creating new records, it helps to have something in at least one of the fields so that you can find it again in the future. It is possible to save a record with every single data field empty. And the problem is you then can't find that record later when you need to, because how do you find an empty record? You can't search on nothing. So I suggest to everybody that they always have a required column in their new layers. And we'll now just show you how we do that and what the impact is when we have done it. So to amend your layer when you've created it, you need to go up to your little cogwheel up here, and then you select administration. And then it looks blank. It's very worrying because you think, God, now what? But what's happening is that you're downloading all of your layers from the cloud, and you'll see that this little wheel here is spinning, and all of a sudden, after a second or two, up will pop all of your layers, and lo and behold, we're back to the business of there's no sign of the layer that we've created. So you're going to have to scroll down to find it. So we'll scroll down, and there we are at the bottom. Now, for the sake of today's purposes and for you yourself, you really want to have the layers that you use most frequently up at the top of your collection of parish layers so that you don't have to keep searching to find it. So if you click on the little equals sign here, that will highlight and then give you the chance to drag this layer to wherever you want it. And we're going to drag it all the way to the top. So up we go up here. And eventually it gets to the top. And you can see we've got quite a collection of years. We're a very busy little parish council. But we've now got our new one up here. And we're going to change one of the columns, you recall. So what we're going to do is move over here. You'll see there are 2 tabs, one general and 1 column, and I'm just going to click on the columns. And then up come all these ones that we just created. And you'll see the system automatically fills in these first two columns. And what we want to do is to make the path ID a required column. So I'm just going to click here, and up it pops. Nothing else to do for the moment. So we'll just save this and move on. The save is rather cunningly disguised as a yellow disk up here. So we click on save. We get a message saying you're sure you wish to. So we click on that save. And then we get the little green layer that pops up saying it has been saved. That only shows for about 5 seconds. So you can't go off and make a cup of tea and come back and then say, I wonder if it saved it or not. You need to pause for 5 seconds until you can. And then we're ready to go back to the maps. So we click on the map icon up here. And here we are back at the beginning. If I click on the parish layers, you'll see here is our actual Footpaths 101, all set to go. So we've completed that layer. Everything's done, it's fine, but we actually need to put some data in there now. So the way to add data is as an add feature, and you get an add feature choice by clicking with your right click anywhere on this layer. So if I right click here, oops, I didn't mean that one, let's right click that way. And up pops this little mini menu, and we're going to add a feature. And you'll see that your system has changed and it's brought up a blank record here in the left-hand side. And all we need to do is go ahead and fill in the data. And look, you'll see that path ID, the one we said is required, is now outlined in red. And you'll see that your save button is grayed out. So you cannot save a record now until you put some data in this field at least. I'm going to fill in a couple of the fields for you, the first two ones, and then show you what happens when we get to our first drop-down list. So I click in there, we filled in the first details, and here's the drop-down of those three values that we put in. What I wanted to highlight was for you, if you decide later that you want to have good, bad, dangerous, and indifferent, then you can just add indifferent by clicking on that plus sign. We're not going to do that now, so we'll just carry on and fill in the other fields, which I've done for you. I've selected a priority of 1 because there aren't any issues on this footpath at the moment. It helps to know who the landowner is because they're responsible for footpaths, and it helps to know who the heck told you about this one in the first place. So we've done that. You'll notice that your save button, even though you've filled in the required field, is still grayed out. And that's because we haven't actually put something on the map yet. And you do need to add a path or a something onto the map itself. Now, you can't see it on my screen, but as you move your mouse around in this condition, it will have changed from an arrow to a crosshairs, telling you you've got to move this somewhere as a target and start it. So I'm going to move to the top of our footpath and click once, and then the next slide will show you what that did, even though when you do it yourself, you won't quite see what I'm showing you. So up pops this little blue button, which is the start of your path. And what happens now is you created that by clicking once, but then you've got no click on your mouse at all. You're just holding your mouse, and as you move it, a blue line will follow it. And the blue line will follow in a straight line wherever you go until you get to a point where you want to change direction. You click again, and then the blue line will head off in a new direction. So this is how you create a path. We now want to do what I call the quick and dirty thing. It's one of those hints in Parish Online. When you're setting something in for the first time, just do it in a rush. Be very approximate, because you'll see it's so much easier to straighten things out later. Particularly because you can zoom in to a much closer level of data and move things around with much greater precision. So for the starting point, you just do it rough and dirty. So in your imagination, assume I've come down the path here to about here. I've clicked once. I'm changing direction down to here. I'm going to click again and zoom direction down to here. When you get to the end, you double click, and that tells the system that you've finished. And so we're going to imagine I've double clicked here, and you'll see that now your path is in. So notice how it sort of starts the top left-hand edge of this alleyway, but when you get to the bottom of the path, it's now at the bottom right-hand edge. And we zoom over here, and we go down here, and we go down here. And over on the left-hand side, the data record has changed to a completely new one, because the system assumes that having put in one path, you may very well want to put in another. And on you go. So you can put in a lot of data at once, and the system is sort of very helpful to you there. In today's example, we aren't going to want to add another piece of data just yet. So I'm going to click on the X to shut down the feature editor. And we go back to our regular map. You'll notice that our footpath layer is still ticked, and the footpath is now there in red. And what we want to do is to edit this path. I mentioned to you that we do that. So usual thing in Parish Online, if you want to work on something, you click on it. So you just click anywhere on the red line, and up pops the list of layers that you may be interested in, because if you have, for instance, the footpaths layer and the footpath features layer, it won't know which one you want when you click on this red line. So it gives you a list of choices here, and we're going to just choose actual footpaths. So to show you that you've selected a layer, the color changes, it goes to blue. Over here, your data record comes up. So this is all the information that we put on or put in on this particular path. You can go ahead and make changes now if you want to. If you've spelled somebody's name wrongly or you put in the wrong date, you edit by just clicking on the blue pencil. And we want to edit the position of the path, so we're going to do that. And you'll see that this is now switched into feature editor mode, meaning that you can make these changes. And also you can go ahead over and change this line. And this is what we want to change. And you'll notice, although you can't see it on my presentation, but your cursors will be at crosshairs at this point. So what we want to do is to find a point that we want to change on this, and we probably need to zoom in to get the detail right. So I'm now going to zoom in, and we're going to go up to the top of the path and click it. And although you can't see I've done it, what I've done is I clicked on the top, it put a little blue ball on the top of the thing, and I was then free to move it around. So I moved the ball to the center of this enlarged alleyway. And then down here, I came down and clicked here, got another blue ball, and I could then move the whole line so that the footpath ran straight down through the center of our alleyway. And then you can do this over and over again with something, but you get much greater precision at this zoom in level. But it's very difficult to put in something from scratch on this high scale, large scaling. So, you know, try putting it in quick and dirty on a small scale to begin with, because it's very quick to come back and change it with more precision later. Certainly, if you're working in Parish Online, let's suppose you're working on something that uses a polygon, like a planning application, and you want to imagine you want to trace out this building here in the top left corner, going around all those little fiddly bits is very complicated. I would just suggest you draw a quick line all around the whole thing and then come back, zoom in, and you can adjust it with great precision to get around all these little fiddly bits. It's a piece of cake and it makes your life a lot simpler. And the other big thing is that when you're doing something complicated like this, if you're doing it from the start, then somewhere around here, someone will ring the telephone and you'll double click, and all of a sudden you've just stopped halfway, and then picking up the bits from thereafter is really tricky. Just do the whole thing once in a sort of big diagram and then just change it later. This is also the moment when, again, you could have changed any of the data in here should you want to. All right, on to the next one. Really, I'm just showing you, I've zoomed back out to show you the effect of the changes that we've made. And now this line runs straight down the middle of the alleyway. And this is a little bit straighter here. I moved the bottom end to the actual point where the footpath ends, because I had been sort of 10 feet or more away from the end of that. And we like precision. So we're now perfectly happy. We click on save. I'm not going to make any more changes to this record. So let's close down the editor and click on the X. So where are we? We've created a new layer. We've added a footpath to it. We've filled in the data record. We've realigned the path whilst we're in the feature editor. We could have made changes whilst we were in the editor, and we now want to go into styling so that the path can be thicker. We can change its color according to whether it's good, bad, or dangerous. And we can give the path a label, which will be its path ID. So to get to styling, you go to your actual layer that we're using here, you right click, up comes the mini menu, and we're going to click on style. Now it pops a screen which has got 4 separate columns, right? The left-hand column, style options, middle column, label options. This third column changes according to what we do over here, so don't pay attention to it at the moment. And the right-hand side, a very useful preview of what you're doing. And you can just see we've got a path that's rather thin and it's got no data on it at all. So let's go ahead and change these things. So the first thing we want to do is to say we want the color to change according to status. So the system defaults to single style type when you start. What we're going to do is click on this style type, and you'll see we now get a choice of class space. And what we're going to be doing is making changes according to class. So we want to click on class based. Done that, then we've moved down to the class column where it says, so what do you want this class to be based on? And we want it to be based on status. So I now click on status. And now you can see what the impact of this is. So over here, your middle third column has suddenly changed to classes. Notice that it comes up with the 3 available values and says, what color do you want them? And again, it defaults to its own color scheme. And you say, well, the good one should never be red, it should be green. And the dangerous one should never be green, it should be red. We can certainly leave the bad as pink. So I'm going to click on the red, and up pops the color chart. And you can change it to any hue that you like, either up here. If you happen to know your RGB values, you can stick them in here. But by far the simplest thing is to say, I just want it to be dark green. So I click on dark green. You'll see that it's changed to dark green here. We've still got a match with dangerous, and I'll go ahead and change that exactly the same way, but won't bore you with doing it now. And over here, in the meantime, we're going to change the label column. So I'm just going to click there. And it pops down and says, you can have all these things as labels on your path. What do you want? And we want path ID. So I'm going to click on that. And notice that cunningly, we've now got the dangerous path to be in red, the bad to be in pink, and the good to be in green. You could write a movie about this, couldn't you? What else are we going to change? I'm going to change here. You look and see you can put different widths or thicknesses of the line in place. I'm going to change each of these to 10. So you just click on these, you get a little up and down arrow. You can adjust the scroll to what you want, make them all the same thicknesses. So they're all going to be levels of 10. I'm also going to change this label size here to 15. It's just a matter of clicking on the plus button. So let's do that. So we've moved on. We've got 10 in each of these. We've got 15 over here. And you can see what's happened in the preview. A much thicker path, and the path ID is going to be here. So that's just the column name. When you get to actually the map itself, it'll change that to whatever the correct path is for, or ID is for that particular path. So we're all set now. Click on save. Woo! Somehow I've got you the wrong slide. I beg your pardon. It's the, yes, I'm sorry, this one I forgot to delete. Let me move on to the next one. So let me just say where we are. We've got our first layer in place, and we've styled it. It's a line layer, and we have added a footpath to it, and we've added color, and we've given it a label. And the next step now is to create that second layer, which is the footpath features. This is where you add styles, bridges, gates, that sort of thing. To save time, I've done this for you. So we're now going to show you that we've added footpath features 101. And it's now showing, but you can't see any features here because we haven't added them yet. Well, we just added the layer. So now what we want to do is to put a feature in, and we're now going to right click on here and produce an add feature. We click on the add feature button. And then as usual, it pops up and says, okay, here's the blank data record. What would you like to put in here? I'm going to fill in some data for you. So I put in a style number. I've put in that it is a style. It's in good condition. It's on this particular path, and it doesn't have any issues. So what we're going to do now is your button is still grayed out, so it means you haven't put the feature on the map anywhere. And what I'm going to do is to add this style down at the bottom of this map here. So I've done it, and now you'll see that it's put a little red dot in there, so you can access it if you need to. And the system has said, okay, if you want to add another one, go right ahead. So we're going to go right ahead and fill in details on a second feature, which is going to be a signpost to this path, which we'll put here. And so now you can see I've added that. And the system again has said, I'm now ready for another feature. And we're going to say, okay, we've done these so far. Let's click on X. And let's go back to right click on the features layer, and we'll style it. So same old same screen, but you'll notice that I've already changed this for you. We're going to change this to class-based. The column will be based on status, which we'll get to in a second. And you can see that the values here are already set up for you. So I'm going to click on the symbols here because they're not what we want for these things. So rather than representing the style with a symbol, what I'd like to do is put in an icon. So I'm going to click on the icon and up pops a screen with hundreds of icons in there. Now, there's a slight issue with this system. It's very good at searching, provided you know what they've called the item you're searching for. And it isn't immediately obvious. So you can see there are flags here, but just typing in flag doesn't bring one up because this is not a flag, it's a purple flag, it's a green flag, it's a pink flag, whatever it is. So when you're getting started with this, the best thing to do is just scroll through until you find the one. Now, what we wanted to do was to put a bridge in. So I've selected this little one here. And well, I didn't, sorry. What I did was put in a signpost sign for the signpost, and I put in the style for the styles. And we've come back to the map and you can see what the impact was of doing that. So basically, when you click on those icons, you select the one you want. I did it for both of these two things. Now we have icons. The other thing that I did, which again, I didn't spend your time on, was I changed the size of the icons. So I've actually made them much larger than they would be by default, just so that it makes it easier for teaching on this session. So usual thing, if you want to do any changes or make any thing, you just click on the sign and up pops the data here. And you can see what we've got, that it is a style, it needs repainting. I put a priority of 2 on it, but our linksman is a very efficient man. Although I reported on the 2nd of February that it needed work, he'd done it by the 6th. And so this issue is now resolved. And this sort of data will show up later why you want to store that sort of information, but that's the sort of thing that you want. The other reason I put up this one again is that we hadn't added any attachments to records yet, and you need to know that we can do that. So any of your features, you can add any attachment that you like to it. It can be photographs, it can be Word documents, it can be spreadsheets, almost anything that you wish you can add to Parish Online. And so we're just going to do that. We clicked, there was a plus sign there. So I've clicked on the plus sign, it's turned into a minus and says you have no attachments, but you can add one by clicking here. So I'm clicking there and I've selected a photograph, which has now been added as a picture of this style to the signpost to this record. So you can come back to this and download the photograph, and it's now permanently a part of this record. Right, so where are we? We've done both layers, we've added features to both layers, we've styled both layers, and what we need to do now is do something with all this information. So we're going to publish the results, we're going to go quickly through hints and tips, and then we go into questions. So to publish the results or to make use of them, there's a really wonderful, quite new feature in Parish Online called Table View. So to get this mini menu up, remember you right click anywhere in the layer that you're interested in, and then we select Table View. And up comes every record that you added. Now we've only added 2, but as soon as you start getting a number of them, you see that they scroll all the way down. One of the beauties of this system is you can edit it. So if you didn't like the word none, and you should have put in desperate need or something, you can just click on none and type in desperate need. And then presumably you might want to change the priority and put it up to 5, whatever. But this is a very useful place for making changes to lots of records at the same time. The other thing that you can do from here is to export the data to a spreadsheet, where once it's in a spreadsheet, you can manipulate it any way you like. I think that's easier than using the filter features that we have in the system. But these are here, I'll just mention them in passing, but you can say, show me only those signposts which have a priority of 5, and you get those up here. Personally, I'm more, familiar with spreadsheets, and so I tend to export everything and then play with it in the spreadsheet, but that's entirely a matter of your personal choice. So that's the table view, fabulous for generating data that you can use, you can manipulate, and for editing lots of records at once. I hope everyone is familiar with printing within Parish Online, but there is a big menu choice on the main screen called Print, and then it says, do you want to print to a printer, which gives you a paper copy, or do you want to print to a PDF file for an electronic copy that you can then email to anybody you like? So I'm assuming that you know it's there. I'm just letting you know that you can do that with your footpaths should you wish to. Ditto for public maps. There are all sorts of wonderful videos on the knowledge base or in the knowledge base to help you on all of these things. And I strongly recommend that you go to the knowledge base, and we'll even show you how to do that later. So that's publishing the information that you've put into the system. I'm going to show you a way of creating the footpaths much more quickly if you happen to have access to any layer of footpaths, whether it be in Parish Online or from your county council or whatever. But other hints, ask people to help you out by sending in photographs of styles that are in trouble or whatever. You may not recognize instantly from a picture of a single style which style it is, but if you ask them to send in the GPS coordinates when they took the picture, that will help you. There is a way, if you're not familiar with it, of giving people access to Parish Online from their phones. And so when they're standing at a style and they take a picture of it, the photograph that they take will arrive in Parish Online in the right place. Really sweet little product. It's called geolocation. If you haven't used it yet, look up the video on geolocation. It tells you exactly how to do it. The other thing, for those of you who are overworked, I suggest you create a footpath committee and let someone else do all the work. The beauty of this is that you can have non-councillors online, but because they're related users, they're doing parish council work, they're all permitted access to Parish Online under the licensing rules from the Ordnance Survey. So just one last hint on how you can speed up your entering the layers. If you've got, as we have, the public rights of way, then the local footpaths are all in here already, or at least where the parish council, sorry, the county council thinks those footpaths are. So it now becomes a very simple matter to click on add a feature, and you can just trace the lines that the parish, the public rights of way contain. Remembering that they may not be brilliantly accurate, they're there as a guide to you. So in this case, I've suggested that although the public rights of way people think this is a straight line, local usage is people have detoured around cowpats and trees and things. So there's more of a curve to this line, but at least it would have given you something to start with. So just a quick way of slight cheating, but if there is information there that you can use to create your own layer very quickly, then I suggest you use it. So helpful links. We get to the question and answer stage. There are videos that describe everything we've talked about today. They're all visible on the user group page. So here's the page for that. Remember, I'm going to send you a copy of this presentation. So all this information is coming to you. I do think the knowledge base in Parish Online is very good. If you're not familiar with it, it's up in the top right corner where that cogwheel was. Click on that and choose help and support. For those of you who don't know about the user group banter sessions, 3 o'clock every Friday afternoon, anybody can come and ask a question and the on-hand experts will give you your answer right there and then. It's brilliant. And last thing, for ways that you could possibly help me, if this course has been helpful, then I'd love to know what other courses you'd like to see being offered. And we can talk about that, or you can email me, or you can sputter in indignation and go off and say nothing. So I'm now going to end this. I'm going to come back to the main screen and say, how is everybody? And my goodness me, look at all these questions. Okay. So can we change the order of the personal layers at a later date? Yes, you can do it whenever you like. It doesn't have to be during the setup. You can always go back to that cogwheel of administration, click on cogwheel, click on administration, go into the layers, and you can move them around in any order you like. Okay, questions from anybody? Utter silence. This is often the way, and then suddenly something will start, and that begins a snowball of questions. There must be somebody who's got something to think of, somebody who can tell me what else they want to have a course in.
Well, I've got a random, well, sort of random question.
Okay, go for it.
Obviously, we have access to the third party's layers. Do they have access to ours?
That's a really good question. So Parish Online is a two-way data flow if anybody permits it. I've yet to find an organization within government that says, yes, we'd be really happy to have you update our records. But the possibility is there. And I mean, a lot of things are happening with Parish Online at the moment because of climate change and so forth. It's all getting rather exciting. And there are groups in the country that will let you change data. So for instance, you've got a couple of national layers, one's called cemeteries and one's called allotments. And the basic data to get us started on that came from A, the National Allotment Society, and B, from the Institute for Cemetery and Crematorium Management. I knew you'd want to know that. And they put all the data in, and then they let all the parish councils across the country change the data to match what they wanted. So they would say, we know you've got a cemetery here, but could you tell us how many empty available plots there are in it? And the allotments people said, you used to have allotments here 30 years ago. Do you still have them? And are they the same shape? Have they grown? Have they shrunk? And they let the parish councils change those, and they reflected that all the way up the system into the top level databases. So there is a two-way data flow, but it's rare for it to be implemented. But I think as we grow, sorry, go on.
That's right. I was just going to say, can they view it so we can see the county's public rights of way list, but could they view ours if we made our own version?
Oh, I beg your pardon. No, nobody sees what you've done. The only people who can see your parish layers are people in your parish. I can't see what you've done, and nor can anybody else. So your parish layers are personal, they're private. You can publish them, in which case everybody can see them. If you publish a URL of, I don't know, your planning applications or something, then it can be seen all over the country because you published it, but that's entirely your choice. Can we get to a picture of a map with the footpath to put in a leaflet? Oh, absolutely. Yes, that's a great thing, Claire. If you print it as a PDF, then whoever prints off your leaflet, your brochure, can just include the PDF in there. Yeah, we're doing that all the time. It's great use of the system. So yes. Any other questions from anyone?
Just going back to what Georgia was saying about related users, presumably they can't actually, they can upload the photo, but they can't alter your system or add it into the system.
That's a really, really good question, Anne. And the answer is that the administrator of the system, which is usually the parish clerk, but not always, is able to say who can do what. Mm-hmm. So the sort of starting point is read only, which means exactly that. Then the next step up is editor, where you can say you can edit a layer that you've created, but you can't edit anywhere else. And then you can make a database manager who's able to make any changes that you can make. And then there's the administrator, the top layer, who has access to a couple of layers that nobody else does, which are all to do with billing and payment of the bill. So not very exciting. So you can choose. But yes, certainly you can have people in a footpath committee who are able to make changes to the footpaths, but they can't change anything else you've done.
And the related user, so the person, the villager that sent the photo just sends the photo to the administrator and they upload it.
No. You can let them add the photo, if you will. The term related user is purely a word that's used to satisfy the ordnance survey. So the digital map that all of this is built on is an ordnance survey map.
Yeah.
They have certain licensing requirements to retain some measure of control over it. And everybody who's a parish councillor or clerk is automatically granted full access to that map through the PSGA, the agreement that lets public servants use the system. However, they won't let you assign licenses or user action to anybody else unless they're a related user. And the term related user is rather loose, but basically it means any environmental or community group that is doing something that the parish council determines is of value to the community. So the best way around this is to have an item on a parish council meeting agenda that says we wish to give the footpath committee access to parish online. Then you debate it for all of 32 seconds and then it goes in the minutes that said yes, it was decided they should do. And that's all you're doing. You're just following basically the fine points of the Ordnance Survey's licensing agreement.
Okay.
But a related user is anybody who's doing anything related to parish council business. And you can be pretty free with your definition of what that is. So if you've got an environmental group that is discovering where the local toads are nesting, that sort of thing, then that could be a great use to the community. And so you can make sure that that environmental group is a related user. And I think as we get more and more into climate change, this is going to become ever more important because we're broadening the number of users that are using Parish Online by a huge amount. We're scaling up tremendously. So copyright for the Ordnance Survey PDF, that's a great question. When you do a PDF, it automatically puts in the copyright instructions on the PDF. They're printed there for you. You can't avoid it. And that meets the Ordnance Survey's requirements. So it's actually quite difficult for you to break the law with Parish Online, I'm pleased to tell you. All right, no one has said anything yet about what they'd like to see else as a training course. I'm very sad. In fact, I'm quite gloomy.
You have to think about it.
Come again? And you want to think about it?
You have to think about it.
Of course you do. Well, I think
still very new to it.
What I sent when I sent out the email to you with all the presentation slides, and in fact this video, it gives you a bit more. It gives you a much more comprehensive list of where you can go for help. And I think once you see what's available, then you can say, oh, but if only we could do this, or if only we could do that. And then if you let me know, I'd be very grateful. Because it helps everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think our neighbourhood planning team are using it, but I would like to see. We had major issues last December, flooding in South Norfolk, and I think that's what our interest would be, to sort of log that sort of thing, waterways onto it. Yes, well,
one of the layers you've got is from the Environment Agency,
yes,
and it contains all the flooding areas. I think it's utterly fascinating. I mean, I live in Somerset, which is sort of the Somerset levels are mostly at or below seawater level, seawater height. And when you turn on the environmental layers of flooding, it's extraordinary. Most of Somerset turns blue underwater. It's actual fact. It does work that way. We produce huge amounts of milk in this county because this is where all the grass is, and all the grass is here because it's always underwater. So anybody else before I say thank you so much for joining me this afternoon? I hope this is helpful. I will get out the video and the presentation slides to you probably tomorrow now, because the video editing takes a while, but you will have it by the end of tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed meeting you all. And Claire, congratulations. You seem to still be there. Well done. Your train ride is successful. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.